Our British landscape and our woodlands are not only under threat from deforestation and climate change, but also from deer overgrazing.
Deer at the moment are causing an enormous amount of damage to our ecosystem. What deer love to do is to go into the forest, and they basically destroy the understory there, which is the vegetation that grows underneath the trees. And in doing so, they remove the understory, they damage wildflowers, and that's important habitat for other creatures as well. So they're eating flowers like bluebells, oxlip, and this understory is important for insects. So by damaging the understory, there's a knock-on effect there for insectivorous animals that would normally be eating those insects. And then there are birds such as our very rare nightingale, which would normally nest in the understory, and that bird has been affected as well by deer. We've got red deer and roe deer, and then we have the naturalised fallow deer, and they really have been increasing in numbers dramatically without the natural predators that they would normally have, so without lynx and wolf. So there's a big problem of expanding populations there.
To protect our woodlands, we manage deer by the process of deer culling. We interviewed the public to see what their views are on this subject.
Cumbria is quite unique in that it has a lot of native deer, and I think it's only right that natural animals and the nature should be preserved as much as possible.
Not terribly keen on culling deer, to be quite honest. I think they're nice creatures, but on the other hand I do see the problems that they cause.
Very regrettably and quite sadly, I think one does have to cull deer, because the deer population is probably bigger now than it's ever been in the UK's history, certainly since Norman times. And unfortunately the downside of lots of deer is they eat all the other vegetation, which in particular prevents the Caledonian pine forest from regenerating, and you need the original Caledonian pine forest for all the other species such as Scottish crossbills, crested tits, and more particularly the Scottish wildcat.
To find out how he managed deer, we spoke to a local deer stalker from the Growthwaite estate.
You can either be deer stalking with clients, which involves taking a client out with you, and you assist them in the process of tracking down a deer, identifying it correctly, and then executing the shot safely. That's client stalking. Otherwise there's sort of more the deer management side, when it's just myself or a other, more concentrating on culling the deer in the local area, selective culling. The deer in this part of the world live in the woods predominantly, and they make their way out onto the fields at night time for grazing, where the better grazing is. So you only really find them in the woods, so it's very much woodland stalking here. You need to be very aware of the wind direction, because if the deer get any sense or smell of you at all, they'll be be gone before you've even seen them. You know, we've got two types of deer in this area. We've got red deer, the traditional Furness Fells red deer, and we've also got roe deer.
With an overpopulation of deer in our country, causing so much damage to our ecosystem, and with the destruction of natural predators such as wolves, is deer culling moral, and is it something we should do?
I do believe it's our responsibility to manage deer populations. We've created the ecosystems in which these animals live. We are the ones that made their predators go extinct, so that the lynx and the wolf would have been the natural predators of deer. And so they're one of the reasons why deer populations are getting so large.
And wolves can run all day and doesn't really affect them, so that's basically how they hunt their deer. They chase after them until they're exhausted, and what happens is the weakest or the oldest or the wounded are the ones that drop to the back naturally, and they're the ones that get selected. It's called natural selection, and we're trying to recreate that, I suppose, through the deer management. We're trying to encourage the better quality animals to come through and breed, and we're trying to selectively cull the poorer, weaker animals to maintain a healthy herd.
It's through our own situations that we've accidentally or deliberately released some of these introduced species into the wild, so we have these extra species of deer now, and that is down to us as well. So I very much believe that we do have a responsibility to try and put that right.
Managing deer is key, as without it, it can cause many problems both with deer and with the public. An overpopulation of deer can cause an increase of diseases within its population. Deer venturing into public areas can also increase the number of road traffic collisions. The shooting and culling of deer may be justified, but that doesn't mean it's the best option to manage deer populations, or that it is without its negatives. Not only is it considered cruel, but without proper organisation and planning, deer culling can even become unsuccessful in managing deer populations and protecting woodlands.
From a scientific point of view, in any habitat, you have a problem when you reduce the population, is that it decreases competition and that population will bounce back.
So what other alternatives could we employ to manage deer? The contraceptive could be a viable option, but it still has its problems and limitations.
Administering contraception to wild animals is a real challenge. You can't use the hormonal-based contraceptions because you can't really administer them properly into the right targeted individuals. There are systems where you actually vaccinate the animal, so you only need to do it once a year. The vaccination stimulates the animal's immune response and basically blocks any reproductive activities within the body. There are some issues with it. It can affect the behaviour of the deer. So for example, if you use immunosuppressant contraception on the females, it doesn't actually stop them coming into season. It might stop the pregnancy, but it doesn't, and the fertilisation, but it doesn't stop them coming into season. So with red deer, you can get an extended rutting season, and that causes obviously aggression between the males. So there's some welfare concerns as well. At the moment, we probably haven't got the techniques needed to do it really successfully.
So what's the answer to the woodland crisis? Should we cull deer in Britain? Should we just use contraceptives? Or should we try to use them both alongside each other and to continually, through science, search for more viable options, both beneficial for woodlands, for our interests, and best for our deer's well-being? Hopefully one day in the future we will be blessed with thriving biodiverse woodlands and with a healthy untravelled deer population roaming our British landscape, similar to what it was once like before.